Hey everybody, Black Ninja 797 here, and welcome back to another video. In today's video, I want to end up making a video where I'm basically, in other words, sending off the Xbox One. The Xbox One, as you guys know, has been my main console of choice for the last several years now, and the thing is that as I've gotten older, I've been a lot more fortunate to be able to buy things such as other consoles, for example. I've been able to venture out through things such as the PlayStation, more Nintendo consoles, even a gaming PC. So now the Xbox brand is not necessarily my go-to or my only choice anymore. And I'm not gonna poo-poo Xbox for everything that it's done. I do have some good things I want to say, and I don't even necessarily have a negative or a positive intent with this video. I'm just kind of just saying it how it is. And I'm basically just, like I said, just saying goodbye to the Xbox One, because the Xbox Series X and the PS5 both come out in a few days, actually. The Xbox One is literally about to be the last gen console, which is just weird to think. And the Xbox Series X and S both come out on the 10th of November. They're going to come out just 2 days before the PlayStation 5. So the Xbox Series X is about to be the first set of brand new generation consoles, and I'm very much looking forward to it. And I hope, Microsoft, that you don't let me down this time, because the Xbox One, I will admit, is probably the worst Xbox. I mean, unless you count the revisions, which honestly in my eyes don't count. I just combine them all and then they equal out into different consoles. Like, for example, let's take something like, let's say, the PlayStation, right? You have the PlayStation Slim, and then you have the PlayStation Pro. And then for the Xbox, you've got the Xbox One, you've got the Xbox One S, and the Xbox One X. And I will say this, is that the Xbox One X to the Xbox is literally like a night and day difference. The original Xbox, unfortunately, is still not really that good from launch. And the reason why I say this is because I have the original Xbox One. When I got the Xbox One, I didn't ever upgrade to an S or an X, because there was no point in my eyes. Because I eventually knew that later on down the line, I was going to eventually replace this console. Because the Xbox One, even though it is a good console, it's still not my favorite. I've made a top 5 favorite consoles video before, and you guys can see where I kind of end up having my, I guess, like, needs or wants in order to have a good console. And the Xbox One just doesn't meet a lot of that. It did meet some stuff, however, though, eventually over time. So let's talk about the Xbox One, shall we? So with the Xbox One, this is the 3rd generation of the Xbox line, other than the fact that you do count possible revisions of the Xbox. Like, you have, obviously, like, the original Xbox, then the original Xbox that was the non-Duke version, or the non-Duke controller version, if you go back that far. You got the Xbox 360, the white one, the Xbox 360 Slim, which is the black one, which a lot of people have. Then you even have the weird funky one, what actually looks like an Xbox One. This one actually gives me nightmares. And then you have the original Xbox One, the Xbox One S, and the Xbox One X. So, if we're counting just solely all the Xbox Ones, counting the Xbox One S and X, which, by the way, Xbox, you really got to work on your names. Microsoft, the fact that you had so many people buy an Xbox One X on accident, you really got to work on your branding, dude. But let's talk about the Xboxes. So, 3 things that I didn't like right off the bat, and still kind of haven't been fixed to this day, is number 1, recording. I am a YouTuber. Obviously, I make content for you guys. And for me to optimally get use out of a console, I need to be able to record on it. And unfortunately, ever since, I would say, roughly about even the 360 era, like really close to the end of the 360, kind of like during basically the end of Black Ops 2, like after the 2nd DLC, maybe around the 3rd, kind of like summertime of 2013, a lot of people just stopped carrying mics. And I understand that the fact that people aren't using mics anymore disincentivized Microsoft to even allow recording of party chat and game chat in the first place. I guess I can see that as a valid excuse. But I didn't like the fact that I had to use third-party adapters, or had to be able to do so many weird and bizarre things, just jumping through hoops to be able to record my friends and just random's voices. Eventually, Microsoft would later on the line make it where you can record your party chat by just having voice through speakers like you used to on Xbox 360, but still to this day, for game chat, you must use an adapter, and I don't know why. It's very frustrating and very infuriating because it just doesn't make it easy. It's why are you trying to almost like, they use the word protect and try to use anti-bully. But the thing is, though, is that nobody on the face of the earth, when they're playing video games, is going to censor themselves unless they have to. Look at the PlayStation scare with the fact that they were talking about reading or recording party chats. You see how that went? Like, we don't like being told what we can and cannot say. It's a private domain. Sure, we use your platform, but it's up to that person to mute us if we're annoying them, or vice versa. I really just wish that you guys didn't make it a pain because of the initial launch, even as late up until like 2015, 2016 territory. Like, this is like 3 years after the console's been out, you finally fixed it, which is nice. I do enjoy that, but I still wish you would have changed it. I really, really do wish you would have changed it because it made it impossible really to have solid recording. And I don't blame third-party companies for struggling, such as the Elgato. Like the fact that they had to make a crappy adapter cable is not necessarily their fault. It's just that Microsoft basically made them to. So that's just annoying, and I wish that you guys never had that issue in the first place. Now let's talk about user interfaces. Oh my god, Jesus Christ, the Xbox One has a terrible user interface, even to this day. Like, I would say the only thing worse, that is worse than the Xbox One's user interface is the PS3's. The PS3 has a worse user interface just solely because that one has so many subcategories and the symbols look so like you can get lost. The Xbox One's is just cluttery and dirty. It's like a hoarder house. And there's been different revisions, I'll give you that some have been worse than others. But you think that for a console that tries to mimic the layout of Windows would be a lot less confusing. Why is it that randomly when I boot up my Xbox, sometimes the party chat button is in the wrong section, and then sometimes that certain settings get turned on or off because you messed with them during your update? Like, that crap's annoying. It's like the equivalent of like when you boot up your computer and you have update requires restart, or you have to update Windows, like when you turn off your computer. I feel like that's the case with the Xbox One. Like, I feel like every time I turn off my computer, like how I turn on my Xbox, they're both gonna give me a random update that I do not want. And it just screws with my console, and I have to redo my settings, and it gets annoying and old really, really fast. Especially when the settings that you modify are shit that is really important to me, or when the settings that you're also modifying are stuff that doesn't help the consumer. Like, I don't like the fact that these settings were so taboo or like no-nos. Like, why is it that you guys are uberly strict about game chat, but then all of a sudden you end up adding in a setting where basically anybody can find out what the hell I'm doing, even though I did not add them back on my friends list? You know what I mean? You guys remember the Xbox One's original party system where you could have followers? You can still kind of do that to this day. You could still to this day follow somebody on the Xbox as if you were like following them on like a Twitter or YouTube or something, and you can see everything that they are doing as if you're their friend. That crap is creepy, dude. Why can someone follow me and know exactly what I'm doing like a friend when I didn't invite them and I didn't accept their friend request? That's just weird, it's stalkerish, and it's creepy. The way that you guys lay out your Xbox, it just does not make sense. Why are some settings taboo and some are not? Just keep a consistency at least. That's at least the one thing I can respect about PlayStation, is that they were at least clear on what they were trying to do. Your indecisiveness made it very inconvenient because I didn't know how to adapt around you, Microsoft. And then I would say probably the last thing is just the poor game library. I will admit that the Microsoft Store is definitely a really cool thing, especially now with the Game Pass. I will give them this, that wrapping up with the Xbox, I do recommend that you guys buy the Game Pass and invest into that, because the Xbox One and just the Microsoft Game Pass is actually a really cool feature, and it's really definitely worth the investment. But the initial launch, even to this day kind of, the Xbox exclusives in particular were very lackluster. Microsoft has been losing their exclusives for the longest time now, and there's only really like Titanfall at the very beginning of the original Xbox, like with Titanfall 1, and then they eventually lost it and then went over to PlayStation and PC. That's kind of like an example I'm giving here. So really, the Xbox One throughout its life, the only thing it had going for it was a Titanfall 1 in the beginning, Halo, Gears of War, and I would say maybe Battlefield stuff, because technically Battlefield did get some weird exclusives on the Xbox, but not that many. And I just don't like how that... There really was no incentive to have an Xbox One unless you were already an Xbox guy. Like, the only people that really like the Xbox is the people that previously had an Xbox. I can't recommend you an Xbox One if you've never played an Xbox before, and I would actually much rather recommend you a PlayStation, because the PlayStation is better, or at least in the sense of the PlayStation 4 to the Xbox One. The PlayStation 3 to the Xbox 360, on the other hand, was switched. I give Sony credit the fact that they were able to adapt around it and make even a comeback in terms of best-selling console at the very end of the PlayStation and Xbox 360's life cycle. I will give them that. So maybe the Xbox One suffered a PlayStation 3, where they just had a bad year, but they'll make a comeback. Now, I understand that the Xbox has never really been out to be the #1 console to begin with, but the one thing that I hope that the consoles eventually end up doing is just stop being a pain and more rather a pleasure. I am more enjoying my PC more than ever than the Xbox or my PlayStation, just because of the fact that the PC essentially does absolutely everything. And I feel like the only real reason why I even have an Xbox or a PlayStation at this point in the first place is because that's where my friends are. Nintendo, they have exclusives. The PC literally does everything else other than occasional exclusives. And the Xbox and the PlayStation, they have their own exclusives every now and again, sure, but they just don't really hit. And I guess that's just kind of me moving on as I get older and realizing that I'm just going to be more of a PC guy. I get that now. But I just wish that the Xbox One would live up to the hype, because it's basically going to be a eventual computer. That's what they were trying to kind of go for. And that's what the S and the X are trying to go for. The Series X, by the way. Not the Xbox One X. God, the titles are confusing. But the new consoles are essentially trying to be mini computers. And I'm just hoping that with a mini computer logic that you guys be able to meet those standards and not almost have like the crappy, college grade laptop that you get because you're suffering and you need to end up paying off your student loans. That's kind of what the Xbox One felt like, was a barely getting by, struggling student loan laptop. That's kind of what it felt like. That's the best way I can put it in, probably the most nicest way. I will give Microsoft credit this, and I will say that the three things that I did like about, though, is the Game Pass. I did like the fact that they were trying to end up accommodating us, because eventually they did fix things such as the party system and the recording system and even privacy issues, which PlayStation unfortunately has not. I got a PlayStation very late into its life, and the PlayStation 4 still does need things like a recording chat cable, which is kind of annoying. And I do give Microsoft that they are trying to listen. I give them kudos. I give them kudos that they expanded their game library, at least through things such as the Game Pass. That is honestly a really good offer. It's probably one of the best deals that they've ever done. And I also give credit to Microsoft because the fact that they're actually trying to improve. I can't give them credit for anything that they've currently done other than really the Game Pass, but the Xbox Series X and X, Xbox Series S and S. Jesus Christ, Xbox X and Xbox Series S. Holy shit, you need to work on your titles, Microsoft. Anyway, but I will give you credit that I'm looking forward to the future. I hope I do not get let down. I know that the initial launch of the consoles is going to be a rocky start. The initial consoles are always the worst, and the things later down the line, like the console revisions, are always the best. I know that going into this, and this is the first time I've ever bought consoles on launch. But I wanted to give it a try and give it the benefit of the doubt. So here's hoping that the consoles will work. But for the Xbox One in particular, really the only thing that was going for it was that fact that my friends were already here and I had the familiarity, and that they saved it kind of with the games. The exclusives never really were there. They kind of got lost over time, actually. And I would say that with a mixture of user friendliness being not there, and just a poor layout of how you handle the console in the first place, just kind of made me grow to dislike the Xbox One eventually. It's kind of like that grandparent where, like, you love them because they're your grandparent, you're familiar with them, you know that they've tried to get your back, but they're just slowly fading away, and eventually you just gotta learn to accept the fate. And I'm hoping that how the Xbox One, as I've related to the PS3 a second ago, and even you can relate for Nintendo if you want to, just say like when Nintendo had the Wii U, everything is going to end up being different. There's going to be always a chain of command, and there's always going to be one console that's probably going to be better than the other one. But I don't want it to be like one is significantly, vastly worse or better than the other one, and kind of makes the other one like a monopoly. Nintendo, their worst was the Wii U. PlayStation, their worst is the PS3. Xbox, I unfortunately lived through it, and I get it, and I can just express the true feeling, I guess, or the gripe rather, because the Xbox One is probably the worst of the Xbox line, and I lived through it, kind of like how people that are Nintendo or PlayStation fans live through their, appropriate generations of consoles. I am just really hoping that this console, the Xbox Series X and S, I'm getting an X, I'm just hoping that they both manage to impress me, and stay that way too. I really hope that I don't boot up the console and then the problems that are on the Xbox One are still there, or just a new problem just arises. In fact, I really hope that, honestly, that the Xbox One and the Xbox Series X and the Xbox, just whatever console you may choose, because technically you are going to have cross-gen play with some of these games, and also you're going to have the Xbox probably going to be supported for a couple more years, kind of like the 360. I just hope the Xbox brand manages to improve, because with the Xbox brand has been kind of just that, not laughing stock, but it's just definitely not the console that you would expect. Because Nintendo and PlayStation, their main thing comes from games, and Xbox, it's computers. So unless you're counting a PC that's by Microsoft, really Microsoft has never really been that main console in the first place. The Xbox brand sure has some things going for it, but it's never been the go-to, and it's never really been a priority for them. I'm hoping that Xbox will actually make their priorities set straight and try to set a standard and say, hey, even though we aren't necessarily in interest of being number one, we'll show you that we can if we really want to. That's why I'm looking for the mentality from Microsoft, because they've already said, and you can even see it through their sales, they don't care to be the number one. It would be nice, but it's not their priority. And I am just really hoping that they show that they can be, if they want to, by managing to have a good console. So that's pretty much going to be it at the end of the day, guys. With the Microsoft brand, I do love myself some Microsoft, and I do love myself Xbox, and it will always be near and dear to my heart, and I'm going to definitely keep buying the Xboxes just because there will obviously be a reason to, with exclusives or just the fact my friends are there, because not all my friends have the ability to buy every single possible console that comes out ever. So, I mean, it's each their own. I mean, that's really all you can say, is to each their own, and I just wish the best. So, Microsoft, I don't expect you to end up being number one. It would be nice if you were, though, because I've supported you all these years, and I really hope that you back the fans up by showing your true colors and show your true capability of what you can actually do. But anyways, guys, this is a random video just kind of paying homage and just kind of laying some things off my chest. Microsoft, I don't know if you'll ever watch this video, but just in case if you do, just know it's coming from a good person that's a fan of your products, and that I actually do care and respect you guys, but I'm just kind of being more blunt rather than just being kind of like taboo or being around the bush about it. But yeah, guys, that's going to be basically it. I hope you guys ended up enjoying today's video, and if you did, please consider dropping a like, comment, and subscribe. And I hope you guys enjoyed another YouTube video from the most unique YouTuber you're ever going to see. Peace out, guys.